Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comic 5 Minutes. I'm Rebel host Shorty, and I'm once again delving into Behemoth Comics. This time for one that I honestly got because of the title, Heavy Metal Drummer. Worth pointing out there that I am actually a drummer and I love heavy metal, and I've been doing it for a while. Regularly, I'm not in a band or anything. I just like to play the drums. So when I saw this title, without knowing anything else about it, I was like, you know what, I'm going to pick this up. I mentioned previously that comic books that involve heavy metal tend to kind of have to go a fine line for me. Because quite often when people do heavy metal comic books, they make heavy metal the butt of the joke of the comic book. And I find that a little bit annoying. And I know it's my own bias here. I'm a big fan of heavy metal, but I also think that you can do really, really cool comics with heavy metal in there where it isn't the butt of the joke. It's actually something that's useful to a situation and helps people, because heavy metal does help people. It helps with depression. People who listen to very aggressive music don't tend to be as aggressive people. Go and read Murder Falcon, and if you have the ability, if it's still out there, I did a review of it, or I was doing a podcast. That's how long ago that was. But that kind of stuff is possible to do with heavy metal as a functioning part of the story. So I was like, yeah, okay, heavy metal drummer, let's give this a go. And it didn't take me long to realize that this is not what I was getting. I was getting something very different than Daniel Warren Johnson's amazing, vibrant artwork, superb action sequences, and rising and falling of emotion and pace. What we got is something very, very different, but I don't want to say it's bad. I don't want anyone to think I'm crapping on this comic book. Some of the things I'm going to use to describe it might come across there being negative, but I promise you these are all done as part of what the story is and what it's trying to do. There is no reason to look at them as negative if the intent is there. It does also contain some pretty, I don't want to say tasteless or bad taste things, but it's things which may not be comfortable for everyone. There's more than one sex scene in here, and there's some issues of lack of consent, but it's also like alien-esque kind of sex scenes. You don't see anything like untoward, but if it's something that might be an issue for you, I would be wary. There is also drug use on several occasions. There's in fact like a whole psychedelic things going on, which kind of riff onto what's actually going on in the story rather than just being the drug use. But then there's also just out and out drug use. So again, be a little bit wary. And there's also quite a lot of violence happens to animals. Some of it feels very normal. It's like cats killing rats because, strays and they need feeding. But the rats have been infected with something and it causes the cat's eyeballs to pop out of its head and become a monster. And that's kind of where it gets a bit weird for me. I'll say that's where it'd been weird for a while. Because this story starts about this guy in a band and his bandmates who don't all get along. But apparently them playing a gig attracts the attention of creatures from another world or another dimension of worlds, and they send things through to take over our world. And they do this by infecting things, and this carries on as I say, there is sexual content, and because of what's going on, there is definitely a lack of informed consent going on here. And then near the end of it, after all this has gone on, it takes quite a while to get to that point. More drug use, which seems to awaken the heavy metal drummer to the idea that some of these creatures that are masquerading as people are aliens, and he goes out with an axe, apparently being woken as an avenger of some type to go and deal with the problem. And it ends with a very much like, well, right now, the only creatures we know that are existing in this world as masquerading as humans are women. And a big, burly, heavy metal guy with an axe is going to go and deal with them. And some of them are sex workers as well. So there's a few extra issues there. But the thing is, you take all of that and you mix it in with a style which I can only describe as trauma and underground comics mixing. I mean, the artistry is very chroma-esque. The colors are really over the top and they drag you in. The psychedelic sequence is beautiful in its own way. So all of these things, which could be described and understood to be bad things in terms of if they were a thing that was happening, the context within which they're happening is interesting and moves the story along and makes me want to find out what's going on, because there's an awful lot of unanswered questions. How exactly did the infestation start? Who were the people who were already captured on this alien world? Where did the drug come from? How is the bliss that these things are offering humans working in their own heads? Are they killing their humans and then reforming them? There's so much going on, not least of which, why would the heavy metal drumming be the thing that brought them to this world? I've said before that sometimes I can read a comic book and be frustrated with the lack of answers, where stuff isn't properly explained and you're just left wondering what on earth is going on here. I don't get that from this. I get that there's simply half a dozen threads of story and narrative running throughout it, and the creators, Kiefer Finlow, Emiliano Pliskin, and Luca Vasello, are not going to rush. They're going to take their time and they're going to use every page they've got to show off the amazing artwork, to make the coloring jump from the page and drag you into this weird, dark, disturbing story. And I think for the right audience, it will be an absolute riot. A lot to like about this one, even though there's also a lot to worry about. That's it for me today, though. I'm back tomorrow. Until then, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.